Hello, Fork and Socket fans. Chester Franklin here. Welcome to the very first episode of Death to Chester. That's right, Fork and Socket's dead, but Chester Franklin is not. I've returned for an all new podcast. You can consider it some sorts of a part two to Fork and Socket, RIP. So, probably wondering why I'm wearing this Chinese hat. Well, I had a spooky experience this week. I got pulled over for speeding. And upon returning home, I signed for the ticket at the point of receiving it. But I returned home and I noticed that on the ticket, under ethnicity, the police officer wrote the letter H, which you may or may not know stands for Hispanic. I am white, so I would expect there to be a W there. But the fact that the officer mistook me to be Hispanic, considering all the ICE investigations and kidnappings that are going on right now, it kind of spooked me a little bit. So, for fear of ICE, I'm in a closet right now. You can probably see my surroundings. It's my hanging clothes. I'm hiding from ICE right now, and I'm really scared. And I haven't heard one single story about ICE taking Vietnamese people. So um, I'm hiding in the closet as a Vietnamese man. Where do I begin with the story? A lot of people are wondering what happened, Chester. What happened to the Fork and Socket podcast? Why did you stop? You had a good 3 year run, and I stopped doing the podcast in 2024. Um, and so I'm going to get into that today. I'm going to fill you all in on what's been happening since the Fork and Socket days of the podcast. I've taken a 2 year break, and I think now I'm ready to return. With that being said, I can take off this get up and get on with the story. A little brighter this way. I'm ready to come out the closet, y'all. I've been hiding in this closet for a long time, not only in fear of ICE, but in fear of people discovering my trials and tribulations and the truth about what's going on in my life. Since we met last, um, I went through a 3 year custody battle for my daughter, and I was doing pretty well. I didn't have an attorney. I was going against an attorney, and I was doing pretty well there for a few years, and then the stress of that really led me to pick up on my drinking. I've been a lifelong drinker. I've been drinking at least since I was, 13, and so a good 20 year history of drinking that really picked up as I was in what turned into a custody battle for my daughter, my only daughter. And it was a hard pill for me to swallow when I lost that final court battle. I had to kind of put my hands up. Uh, my podcast in the past has been recorded at the home that I bought. And what was happening was the other party, my daughter's mother, was essentially bankrupting me due to the differences in our income. I was held responsible for a percentage of her attorney's fees. And so I ended up coming out paying just for her attorney's fees alone about $15,000, including my own time and fees that I accrued on my own by filing paperwork and such. And I was used to having my daughter more times out of the month than her mother had her. And so when it goes from about 50% of the time or more having your child and raising your child since a baby, uh, it becomes really difficult 10 years later to not having that child present anymore. And it drove me to a depths of alcoholism that you wouldn't imagine unless you've went through it yourself. And it even started to affect my podcast. Fork and Socket podcast, the very last video recorded episode that I produced, I was visibly disheveled, and it was supposed to be a comedic spin on the Stop Asian Hate movement of the time, and that didn't really translate into any comedic value. It kind of sounded more kind of like racist. There was a little bit of anger in my tone because I had to start picking up overtime to pay those attorney's fees, and so I was working a lot and just wasn't really in a comedic mood. That episode and others caused a strain on my marriage. The changes in my behavior and drinking habits also created strain on my marriage, and so I had to let Fork and Socket go, everybody. I had to let it die. So never expect a resurgence of that podcast. But please accept my gracious offering of my new podcast, Death to Chester. Hopefully, no less shocking. Hopefully, no less funny, even though I will touch on some serious topics for these next few episodes as I get you caught up on what's been going on with your favorite host, Chester Franklin. So, fast forward a little bit and get real deep into alcoholism, and I get pretty much kicked out of my house by my wife, who's been fed up with my behavior, with my inconsistency, my lack of communication, empathy, all sorts of things. Um, the nature of an alcoholic is to be extremely selfish, self loathe, be depressed, just very self centered. It's all about you. And I really let things go and would not stop drinking. The plan was to drink myself to death, if I'm being honest. Let's get serious here for a moment. And I had no plans of stopping drinking, so she made the ultimate correct decision and kicked me out of the family home. And I know some of you are saying, "Well, your name is on the mortgage, on the paperwork. And it's not called a lease; it's the deed." And so, of course, she can't forcibly kick me out of my own home, but I certainly agreed that my presence was no longer healthy for my kids, my remaining kids in the home, and for her. And that led me to seeking out Elmer Torres of Over the Fence podcast. I've mentioned him many a times on the Fork and Socket podcast. He's been a guest at least twice, and he even did my cover art for this new podcast, so you may be familiar with the name. Elmer Torres of Over the Fence podcast, still my friend, still in the picture. He offered me a place to stay. He has a small place, studio apartment. I said, "Hey, dude, my My wife's tripping. And he agreed with me. Yeah, she's tripping. You know, you don't have a drinking problem. You still have a job. You still pay your bills. Him not knowing really the half of it, not living the experience, only, from a distance. And so I wanted to, because I was so addicted to alcohol, I wanted to agree with him, very much so. And so I stayed with Elmer on his couch for 2 months. 2 months I won't soon forget. So here's a story of being at Elmer's house. When I went to Elmer's, I expected us to, be doing everything together, going out to Applebee's, having drinks, chilling, just living like some teenagers again or something, some bachelors. Elmer didn't have a woman, he doesn't have any children, and I figured, yeah, we'd have a ball. Things turned out quite different. His schedule and my schedule, as far as work goes, were on the opposite time frames. He worked during the day, I worked during the night. And it wasn't soon after I moved in, it would have been just a couple of weeks, that he ended up meeting this girl online and they formed a relationship. And before I know it, I'm laying on the couch trying to get some sleep, and Elmer's having sex with this girl 2 feet from my head. I'm hearing sounds. I'm hearing sounds come from my friend. I'm hearing sounds come from my friend that I never thought that I would hear. The moans that came from Elmer that night are sounds of nightmares. Sounds you would never want to hear. And I stayed up staring at the ceiling the rest of that night, even as they doze into a exhausted slumber. And I started getting kind of frustrated as I laid there thinking, here's my best friend who just met this girl online. He's fucking her. They're both having a gay old time. And not once did he offer me any pussy. I was raised a little different than everybody, I assume. That's just common courtesy where I come from. If you're getting some pussy, you offer your friends some pussy. I mean, obviously not if it's your wife or your girlfriend, but, you know, I was still married. I was just kicked out of the house. I was only expecting it to last a little while and I would come back. So I wasn't interested. But you're the host, I'm your guest. You leave it up to me to say no. You don't just not offer me pussy that you're getting right 2 feet from my head. I just thought that was very inconsiderate. Well, the longer those two were together, it didn't take long. It didn't take but 30 days or less. That's when the trouble started. And I was there to witness it all. I was even the punching bag for some of it. So this new girl, she had been going to a college. I won't name the college, but she had been going to the college for quite some time on a scholarship. And so they were paying for her student housing. And what happened was, because she didn't earn any type of degree or anything over a certain period of time, they were going to cut her housing. And seeing Elmer as an opportunity for potentially free housing, she was trying to get me removed from the apartment. I was a hindrance to her master plan. Fair enough, but I mean, This has been my friend for 20 years, so you can kind of fuck off. That's what I'm thinking in my head, And little do I know, he's explaining to her something we call pillow talk, explaining to her my situation and why he's having sympathy on me for staying there. And so one day, out of anger, she's yelling about me being an alcoholic and a cheater. Something that, those are details that she would have never heard about unless Elmer had told her in private conversation. But yes, that's why I was out of the house. I was accused of infidelity and for being an overall drunk that didn't want to get my shit together. Kind of hurt coming from a stranger. Um, but it is what it is. I had tough skin. Now, the old me would have walked up to her and probably spit in her face, something of that nature, and stood up for myself. But I was at such a decline in my alcoholism that I actually believed, a part of myself believed that I deserved the disrespect that I was receiving. And alcohol has that way of messing with your mind where you feel very low about yourself and you start to believe the negative that people think about you. Well, within that 30-day period of Elmer and this young lady dating, she couldn't get me out. She made an ultimatum: it's me or it's her. And to Elmer's credit, he stood up for me and chose me. That's right, bitch. We are brothers. We're like this. You think you're going to come in here with your sloppy pussy, and just because you let Elmer fuck you in the butthole, you think that's going to get in the way of what we have? What we have is way stronger than sex. It's more robust. So they end up breaking up one day. She comes into the apartment, and in front of me, no shame in her game at all, she refuses to leave Elmer's apartment and threatens to smash up everything. And that's when Elmer started trying to cut ties with this young lady, and she wanted none of it. She would appear at the apartment at all times of day. Maybe Elmer was at work and I was sitting on the couch. And for hours at a time, sit at his doorstep, bang on the door, ring the doorbell, ding dong, 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 for long stretches of time. Elmer called the cops on her multiple times to get her to leave, not wanting to mess up his place to stay because maybe the neighboring apartment dwellers, would get disturbed by the noise as well. And so before she said her final goodbye, she threatened him. And within 2 nights, I went to work one night. Elmer was there by himself, and he heard a knock at the door around 1 in the morning. He looks through his peephole, and there's two figures standing at his door, dressed in all black, hoodies up, faces covered, and he called me. He let me know what was going on, and I told him, just to don't answer it, don't let them hear that you're home, and just watch and see what they do. And eventually they walked away. And the next morning, Elmer's car was gone. They couldn't get to him. These goons couldn't get to Elmer, so they stole his car. And guess who helped pay or did pay to get that car out of the tow yard when it was discovered by police, left vacant at the marina? This guy, who, although I had a good job, I was still paying my mortgage and all the bills at the home I was no longer able to reside in. And sleeping on Elmer's couch, I had little resources to give. But being the giver I am, and being a good saver, I gave Elmer the $600 he needed. And I didn't ask for it to be repaid. He let me sleep on his couch. And I couldn't be more thankful. And that's more payment than I could have ever returned. Because at that point in my life, Chester Franklin became lost. I became lost and confused on what direction to go and what next moves to make. It still wasn't clicking on in me to stop drinking. But with these new developments happening, the last thing I wanted to do was be caught. These guys come back, catch me coming into the apartment or whatnot. It just became like an unsafe place for me to stay. I did have a gun, but it wasn't registered to myself at the time. I've since got rid of it altogether, but the law would have a hard time being on my side for shooting some intruders at an apartment complex. The A, I don't own. B, my name isn't on the lease agreement. And C, with a weapon that was not registered to me. So my only option at that point in time, other than to sleep in my car, live in my car, maybe shower at a truck stop or a YMCA or a 24-hour fitness, and ultimately live homeless, like a homeless man, until my wife would allow me to come back. That being my only other option, I chose to go to rehab. Everybody, I chose to go to rehab, and I checked myself in for a 30-day program. And I have not drinking a drop since. This was late December 2023. I have not drinking a drop of alcohol since I checked myself into that rehab. Now the story's filled with twists because I figured, okay, I'm out of my home. I'm away from my children and my wife because I won't stop drinking. Now I'm in rehab and I'll take it serious and I'll try it out. I'll try to stop drinking for a little while. And the beauty of rehab is you don't really have an option to go to the store and fulfill your daily routine. You're kind of locked away. And that's just what I needed to stop me from getting to alcohol. I just needed to break the routine of every day waking up and getting it, and then drinking all around the clock. I needed to be pulled away from the alcohol. And so completed the 30-day program. I said, hey, problem solved. No more alcohol. Babe, I'm ready to come home now. I'm all better. And I wish it was that simple, everybody. But see, 30 days is not enough time for years of drinking and the mistakes you make, the, the things that you say in a drunken argument or just in conversation in general, being loose with the lips, letting the alcohol get the best of you. 30 days is not enough time to wrong all of your rights. I said that backwards. Right all of your wrongs. It's not enough time to right all your wrongs. And so, getting out of rehab, I face another situation here. Don't want to go back to Elmer's. Anybody who knows a woman knows that they don't stop being mad in 30 days. So I didn't know what he had going on over there. Didn't want to go back into an unsafe environment. Definitely didn't want to be there um, to listen to Elmer fuck. And when I was at Elmer's house, also, I seen somebody almost jump off the fifth story and was caught by her ankles by the police, the responding police officers. So I witnessed an attempted suicide. And I listened to one of his neighbors die from a fentanyl overdose. I heard him gurgling and his family screaming. I seen them take his lifeless body from the apartment, covered in a tarp. And that was just simply not an environment that a newly sober Chester wanted to go back into or wanted to ask to be welcomed back into. I had to protect my sobriety at all costs. So where do I go? Well, it was looking like the car again. I was going to be living in my car. Luckily, the rehab, they have a sober, what's called a SLE, a sober living environment. It's a house. Some people might call it a halfway house. I call it a sober living house. But it's a place for people that are newly sober or getting sober to live. You hold each other accountable. You get drug tested every week to make sure nobody's, and that includes an alcohol test, urine alcohol and breath alcohol testing. Um, you get that done every week. And in order to live there at this one, because I also had a job, I was required to make 3 AA or NA meetings per week. And so this was healthy for me. This was a healthy routine and this was a healthy option. And so I was not welcome back home when I got out of rehab. Instead, I was told to figure it out. And being desperate, I went and lived in a sober living house for 10 months. So it turned into just me getting some help and quitting drinking, thinking I can come back home. Turned into a separation from my wife and family. And it was very embarrassing. And so during that time, I couldn't see myself returning to podcasting because I had nothing funny to talk about. Life was going all wrong. And somebody who had this 5-bedroom house and a marriage and beautiful kids, a thriving podcast, thanks to you guys, the listeners, for me to come to you in such a humbled state, in contrast to my bombastic, arrogant persona, I couldn't bring that energy to Fork and Socket. So that had to end. But I did a lot of thinking and a lot of growing. And I have a story about that sober living. It was my first week. In my first week in the sober living, I was getting, it took some adjustment. The first day, I didn't even want to get out of bed. But the way they had it set up was there were 7 men, including myself, that lived in the home. And it was a 4-bedroom house, so you know what that means. Chester had a roommate, complete stranger. And on the very first day of moving in, my house manager comes up to me and he says, "Hey, Chester, just want to give you a heads up. Don't sleep on your stomach. Your roommate's gay." I have no problem with gay people, so that was not a concern. The concern was this gay man trying to fuck me. And so for that first night, I slept with one eye open like a pirate. Or like or like Ariel when she used to have those facial constrictions. If you remember Ariel, the hot sauce addict from the Fork and Socket podcast, she was my first video recorded interview. And breaking news, she has passed away. She's no longer with us. She became a friend outside of the podcast, and she will be missed. The only solace that I have is that potentially she died in the Fork and Socket shirt that I sent her. So my first week in the SLE, I'm getting adjusted. I think I have a gay rapist as my roommate. He was this 50-something-year-old bodybuilding guy, and that was of concern. I'm minimally muscular myself. Kind of like to keep my figure slim and trim. Makes the dick look bigger. And so I didn't sleep on my stomach. I slept with one eye open, and I made it through the night, only to discover that getting to know the guy, it was all a ruse. He was actually a sexual pervert, but for women. And so I kind of got cool with the guy. I enjoy dirty talk. It's funny. And so we got along quite well. We also had opposite work schedules. So we didn't really, other than on our days off, we didn't really have to interact much anyhow. And so one night he comes home and he has to get some sleep. And it's my day off. And I decide that I'm going to trim my pubes. A little bit of self care. And so while he's trying to sleep, he put his headphones in and stuff like that. And I went into the shared bathroom of ours and started trimming my pubes. Well, while trimming my pubes, I nicked my sack and I started to bleed. I started to bleed a lot. Okay. And so I immediately stopped trimming and squeezed my nutsack and applied pressure, hoping that that would stop the bleeding. And every time I would pop my thumb up and take a look, blood would start running again. So this got concerning after a period of time. I took a shower, everything like that. I dried off, and the blood was still coming. My whole towel got bloodied. I'm like, okay, here we go. We're 15 minutes in, and I'm still running blood out of my balls. So I tried something that you can kind of do. Your saliva sometimes can have like a thicker texture, and it can maybe become like a seal. Like when you seal an envelope. And so I started licking my tongue, dabbing my balls, licking my tongue, dabbing my balls, trying to get a seal on that cut. And the blood kept coming. The blood kept coming. So then I started to Google I started to Google, I nicked my balls. I think I hit something serious. It won't stop bleeding. And the toilet is filled with blood and bloody tissue. And so Google recommended that because of heart flow, that I should get my legs up higher than my heart. So I come out of the bathroom, and as my roommate is sleeping so peacefully like an angel, I'm about 8 feet away from him, laying upside down, doing a headstand against my bed. So who's the gay one, huh? Doing a headstand essentially on the floor and like leaning my body against the bed with my feet up in the air, trying to get this blood to flow back towards my heart, not how gravity would naturally pull it when you're standing up, pull it downward. So um, I did that for a good another 15 minutes or so. And when I got to my feet, because my dick requires so much blood, the bleeding started again. Now, at this point, what do? I'm a stranger in a strange place. This is my first week here. There's 6 other guys in the house that I don't know. I don't know their personalities. I don't know the type of addiction they're in there for. I don't know if they're still going through their withdrawals. I definitely don't want to bother these guys, but it's either that or I call an ambulance and freak everyone and the neighborhood out. And this was something that I would rather keep hush hush. Didn't want my business all out there that I cut my balls. So I reach out to one of the roommates, an actual gay guy. He's the only one home. He's the only one awake. And I show him the toilet, and he looks in and he looks very disturbed. A very disturbed look comes across his face. And I tell him, hey, man, I need to go to Rite Aid. I need some liquid bandage. So he drives me 10 minutes or so away. We get to a Rite Aid or Walgreens or something like that, a drugstore, and pick up some liquid bandage. And we head back to the SLE. Go to the bathroom, and I start applying it. It's like nail polish, but it's supposed to harden really fast. And the problem was because I had the blood flowing, that every time I applied some liquid bandage, the blood would wash it away and continue to run. So I try to dry my balls as much as I can, apply some pressure, and before it can start bleeding, put some liquid bandage, to no avail. So what do I do now? Hey buddy, uh this liquid bandage ain't working. It ain't crusting fast enough on my balls. Think you could take me to the emergency room? The guy doesn't know me from a can of paint, and now he's helping me save my life because I'm bleeding. I'm bleeding from my balls. My egg-sized, succulent, buff balls, freshly trimmed testicles. And then I took a visit to the ER, and he dropped me off there, where, as luck would have it, a gay nurse practitioner came and took a look at my balls, dapped me up. He was very impressed. And I gave him a second dap because he recognizes greatness. And he sealed me up with some hospital grade liquid bandage. Essentially, it's super glue. And he super glued my nutsack. And I called my housemate to see if he could pick me up, which he did. And I returned home and I fell asleep. And to protect my balls further, when I slept, I kind of tucked my balls in between my legs and I went to sleep. And I woke up looking like a transvestite with my balls glued to my gooch. And so I got in the shower with hot water and some Irish Spring and a loofah, and I gently separated my balls from the tucked in status so that they could hang, but with special care so as to not disrupt the super glue that was patching my leaky tire. So here I am at the lowest point of my life. My balls are bleeding. I'm in a sober living house, living with other men, lost my family. And the entire time I tried to get my family back. And unfortunately for my story, it just wasn't the time. I lost everything to alcohol since the Fork and Socket podcast was aired. I did find in myself, not being in a house full of kids running around and yelling and everything, um, not having a wife yelling at me and screaming at me about this and that. I did find a sense of peace. And so in this whole process, I lost everything. I lost Ariel. After the sober living, me and Elmer kind of took different, went our different ways for a while there. I lost everything except for my sense of peace, which I gained, and my fat dick. I lost everything but my sense of peace and my fat dick. So this has been the first episode of Death to Chester. I'm leaving you kind of on a low note, but there's some good stuff coming. On episode 2 of Death to Chester, I'm going to talk to you about my accomplishments post sober living environment. My accomplishments after being a year and a half sober, roughly, or a year sober at that time. They say somewhere around 10% of people that enter rehab successfully remain clean and sober. And I'm happy to report now I'm a few weeks away from 2 years of sobriety, and I am of the 10%. But I have more of an uplifting version of the story to come. I hope you enjoyed this very first episode. And that's just what's been going on with me. And I would love to reconnect with some of you. And if you're new to the podcast, welcome. I hope this wasn't a drain on your attention span. It wasn't a perhaps comedy heavy episode, but I hope that you could see the comedy of my pitiful situation. And I think now I'm ready to come out of this closet, y'all. I don't need to hide or be ashamed of my story. I'm ready to come out of the closet. No homo. No Diddy. Until next time, this is Chester Franklin signing out. Goodbye.